the African leaders not even behaving like Yahoo boys in the first place. Look at Talon. It was just on Saturday. Talon passed, and the National Assembly was probably rubber stamp, passed a law to extend the presidential term to 7 years. And Talon had been very high-handed, like Ouattara. You see, when I even look at the hypocrisy of ECOWAS and they say the volunteer force, and I'm seeing Côte d'Ivoire in there, Côte d'Ivoire, with Alassane Ouattara, that has violated democratic tenets, that has committed this act of state-titism in power, that because most of his preferred successors died, like Hamid Bakayoko and the likes, he decided to stay on the power. He stayed there for like 16 years. Is it countries like Togo? Togo did the same with the constitution. They've made the role of the president ceremonial. They have a council of ministers that the president leads that has the real power. So all of the African leaders have made it very easy for the coups to happen. So in as much as we're saying we condemn coups, we should also check these Yahoo boys we call leaders. Because across the African continent, there are a bunch of Yahoo boys that always think of themselves and not the interests of the people. The truth has to be said. Where is the government going to show us those that are complicit in all of this? If the government cannot show us, then there's a level of complicity going on. Yesterday, they released 100 people. You release people from Niger. There are no killing of bandits. There are no bringing the bandits to book. The playbook is way too obvious now. That's why some people are saying, isn't it looking like collabo? They kidnap people. Till today, the government has not been able to tell us. Those that ordered the troops to leave the secondary school in Kebbi.
They said an investigation.
Investigation my foot. Why investigation done? Investigation my foot. So they don't know who gave an order that troops should leave. And some minutes after, people came in there and picked up our girls. Now, about 100 of them came back. The NSA was even giving us updates that they are in good condition and everything. So why can't the NSA root out those criminal elements that took away the 100 people they've not released now? This thing is looking like collabo. The leaders themselves have not crowned themselves in glory. And that's what we should keep talking about. If we keep having these Yahoo-minded leaders on the African continent, and once they get into power, they think life is all about them. The coups will continue to happen if we don't speak tall against these leaders that are making the condition rife for these coups.
In the Republic of Benin, discussing reactions to the attempted military coup, which was thwarted by the government after soldiers appeared on national television early Sunday morning, claiming to have seized power. A group of at least 8 soldiers, led by Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigri, stormed the country's state television, announcing the removal of President Patrice Talon and the dissolution of all state institutions. The soldiers, identifying themselves as Military Committee for Refoundation, declared the suspension of the Constitution and all political party activities until further notice. They also claimed to have closed the country's borders, resulting in unrest in parts of the country, with a group of demonstrators chanting "Down with Talon" and expressing support for the mutinous soldiers. Well, barely 12 hours after gunfire first rang out in several neighborhoods in Cotonou on Sunday, Benin President Patrice Talon announced that the coup had been thwarted, stating that the country's armed forces and National Guard remained loyal to the Republic, asserting that they stood firm, recaptured their positions, and cleared all resistance held by the mutineers. 14 people have been arrested in connection with the coup attempt. Well, this attempted coup adds Benin to a growing list of West African nations facing military takeovers. The timing of the coup is significant. Benin is preparing for a presidential election in April that would mark the end of President Talon's tenure after 9 years in power since 2016. And I'll take a post on X from Delta Wire. He wrote, "This trend will keep reoccurring amongst African states unless there is a massive international revolution that compels our leaders to start governing with fairness and equity. Until they start utilizing resources of the state for the welfare of the people, Africans will keep rising every day in whatever form, shape, or nomenclature. Until the people start seeing the dividends of democracy, they'll keep being rebellious. African leaders are the problem, and they evolved from amongst us. We're all culpable on this. Well, amid reactions to the failed coup attempt, the coup leader, Pascal Thierry, reappeared in a video which went viral on Sunday, stating that they undertook the mission to free Benin from the dictatorship of President Talon before going on to caution France to stay out of their internal affairs. Well, ECOWAS released a statement on X condemning the coup, describing it as an unconstitutional move, while Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that they stand in firm solidarity with the government and the people of the Republic of Benin. Subsequently, at the request of President Talon, Nigeria sent Air Force fighter jets and ground troops to take over Benin's airspace and help dislodge the coup plotters, eliciting more reactions. This is Bayo Ononuga's post on X. He wrote, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has commended the gallantry of Nigeria's military on Sunday for responding swiftly to the requests by the government of Benin Republic to save its 35-year-old democracy from coup plotters. Well, he went on to state that the Nigerian government acted on two separate requests from the government of Benin. First, by ordering fighter jets to enter the country and take over the airspace to help dislodge the coup plotters. And secondly, the authorities in Benin requested the deployment of Nigerian Air Force assets within Beninois airspace for surveillance and rapid intervention operations under Benin-led coordination with Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufemi Oluyode, confirming that all the requests had been fulfilled.
We can swiftly arrest the bandits in the forest. We can swiftly get all these kidnappers. Nigeria has the power to do this.
Let us do it. Let me take the tweet about the idea of how Nigeria can swiftly respond. This is Chris, who wrote on X. Highlight the word swiftly. Interesting. So Nigeria has the capacity to swiftly defend democracy in another country, yet our democracy is in shambles. A democratically elected governor, Sim Fubara, was illegally removed. The current Senate president was imposed not too democratically elected. Terrorists are decimating our people and stealing their lands. And a brigadier general was gracefully killed by terrorists, etc. Well, at this point, I hope that the President of the United States can order the U.S. military to carry out military operations in Nigeria to flush out the terrorists swiftly. And, you know, that was a harsh response. No, I mean, I would call it, you know, it would appear harsh on television, but that's really the mindset of a lot of Nigerians who believe that these are the things that are going on in Nigeria. I'm hoping that Nigeria can actually also swiftly respond. Online, we also saw reports that Nigeria had bombed France. The invasion had occurred. We saw some videos that were posted online as well. From
France?
Bombed. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Bombed Benin.
Yeah.
And I'll take this. That's one of the videos we saw from Cotonou with an actual, you know, time code from that country. And I'll take a post from investigative journalist David Hudeyi, who wrote, "I think Nigeria is officially over tonight. Bombing your neighbor because a white guy in Paris told you to. Carrying out airstrikes against a fellow African country because Emmanuel Macron wanted you to. Only Apartheid South Africa ever did something like this." A lot of people had been saying that the French president had intervened with that phone call that he made, telling the president that he was going to help with, security in Nigeria as well.
Okay, see, I might not support many things the government on ground does, but we can't pull on Nigeria's parade. It's not today that Nigeria has been investing heavily in securing our fellow West African brothers. We did that in Liberia. Over the years, between Liberia and Sierra Leone, we spent about $15 billion of our own money. So it's not today we've been doing that. The problems we had with it was that the president was supposed to notify the Senate about it. Secondly, the question we should now ask is, there's also a correlation with the case of Niger. That, okay, in the case of Niger, we didn't go in there because there were protests and everything, because of cultural ties and all of that. But the most important question we should ask is, what is leading to all this coup? African leaders themselves. Talon is not his say. See the protests. People were saying, Abba Talon. Down with Talon. So a lot of people were not really in support of this man. That had victimized a lot of people in this country. He has put in his finance minister as a likely successor now. Just on Saturday, the National Assembly in Benin Republic passed a law saying they were going to extend presidential term and things like that. So the leaders themselves have not crowned themselves in glory. And that's what we should keep talking about. If we keep having these Yahoo-minded leaders on the African continent,
Right.
and once they get into power, they think life is all about them. And it's not only Talon. We could go back to the days of Matthew Kerekou. Kerekou also did the same too in Benin Republic. So when are we going to sit down with these leaders, abba with these leaders? Just like Thomas Isodore Noah Shankara used to say back in the days, colonialism, abba, imperialism, abba. When are we going to say abba with these bad leaders on the African continent? Because if we don't say that, the coup will continue to happen. Despite the fact that we say we do not support coup, we are totally against coup. The coups will continue to happen if we don't speak tall against these leaders that are making the condition rife for these coups.
Since that infamous post by President Donald Trump and the threat of coming with guns ablazing to Nigeria if things are not fixed.
I totally condemn every coup, and kudos to the Nigerian forces that went out there to quell the coup. It's not today that Nigeria has been protecting the democracy of West Africa and Africa in general, and kudos to our soldiers. But the bone of contention that Dr. Abadi picked out is, did they do it legally? Because there's a proviso in Section 5 of the Constitution that talked about the president notifying the Senate. Was the Senate notified? And that's why people are now drawing comparisons with the case of Niger. Because in the case of Niger, we all saw the leak that happened, that Nigeria was already preparing a strike, and then the matter came to the Senate, and the Senate advised against it. But what we saw here is that all of a sudden President Tinubu, after the fact, just announced that Nigerian troops had been there and they had quelled the coup and uprising, which we support, but the way it was done. So the question is, will President Tinubu now come back to tell the Senate? Because there's also a proviso when you read through Section 5 of the Constitution that talks about that, okay, that the president can do it, and I'm sure that's where the government will hide under. That the president can do it if it's a limited operation, if it impinges on national security. I don't think they'll be able to prove that, but maybe they will prove that, oh, because it's so close to home, it impedes on national security. And in the next 7 days, maybe now they will now formally make an appeal to the Senate. But the most important question is, and a lot of people are asking this, why did it go through the Senate for the case of Niger? Is it because of cultural ties? Why is that the Senate questioned the case of Niger? Because prior to even the strikes in Niger, there were cases of protests in the north. So we should also look at that. But let's go back to it. In as much as I condemn coup, is Talon a saint? No. And you see, the reason for the coups in these African countries and why an average watcher of television today might support those coups, despite the fact that I condemn the idea, because, and why I condemn the idea of a coup is that once you start, you don't know where to stop. Yeah. Everybody that has force now can take power. Even Yahoo boys and criminals can take power. But the question is, are the African leaders not even behaving like Yahoo boys in the first place? Look at Talon. It was just on Saturday. Talon passed, and the National Assembly was probably robust, passed a law to extend the presidential term to 7 years. Anyway, Talon will not be a beneficiary. But the most important part we should look at about that law is the 25-30-man Senate seats that pretty much second-guesses what the lower house does. There are indications that Talon might want to put himself there to be able to check this is anointed candidate minister. And Talon had been very high-handed, like Ouattara. You see, when I even look at the hypocrisy of ECOWAS and they say the volunteer force, and I'm seeing Côte d'Ivoire in there. Côte d'Ivoire, with Alassane Ouattara, that has violated democratic tenets, that has committed this act of statitism in power, that because most of his preferred successors died, like Hamid Bakayoko and the likes, he decided to stay on the power. He stayed there for like 16 years. Is it countries like Togo? Togo did the same with the constitution. They've made the role of the president ceremonial. They have a council of ministers that the president leads that has the real power. So all of the African leaders have made it very easy for the coups to happen. So in as much as we are saying we condemn coups, we should also check these Yahoo boys we call leaders. Because across the African continent, there are a bunch of Yahoo boys that always think of themselves and not the interests of the people. Secondly, as regards the what's it called? NSA.
Fact-finding mission.
That's very good. But Americans already know the facts of what's happening. There's been mass killings. I'm happy that Americans are on ground. We knew there was a fact-finding mission that was supported by someone that has been nominated as ambassador today. We know how that ended. But the truth has to be said. Where is the government going to show us those that are complicit in all of this? If the government cannot show us, then there's a level of complicity going on. Yesterday, they released 100 people. You release people from Niger. There are no killing of bandits. There are no bringing the bandits to book. The playbook is way too obvious now. That's why some people are saying, isn't it looking like collabo? They kidnap people. Till today, the government has not been able to tell us. Those that ordered the troops to leave the secondary school in Kebbi.
They said an investigation.
Investigation my foot. My investigation done. Investigation by foot. So they don't know who gave an order that troops should leave. And some minutes after, people came in there and picked up our girls. Now, about 100 of them came back. The NSA was even giving us updates that they are in good condition and everything. So why can't the NSA root out those criminal elements that took away the 100 people they've not released now? This thing is looking like collabo. And except we have that level of sincerity. So we are having all of this, and because the government is not standing tall.
All right.
Now, Chapter 8 of the UN Charter, talks about preventing, forceful removal of legitimate governments, democratic governments, and regional groups coming together. Article 21 of the ECOWAS Protocol retains that principle. Article 25 of the ECOWAS Protocol further explains that. So if you look at it, on the surface of it, my gut feeling as an ordinary man would be to say, oh, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has acted reasonably. He has tried to respond very quickly. It was an emergency that was happening by the border, next door to Nigeria. Okay. President Yahoo, who was the predecessor of Patrice Talon, used to refer to Republic of Benin as the 37th state of Nigeria. So, the president could say, oh, Sunday morning, this has happened. Maybe there is some collateral damage that Nigeria may suffer. Let's quickly move in. But it was not just about impulsive reaction. We were told that the Republic of Benin made two requests. One, that Nigeria should help secure the airspace. Two, that Nigeria should even send in ground troops to secure constitutional institutions in the Republic of Benin. So President Tinubu may have acted along this regard. Now, ECOWAS says, oh, we have deployed the standby force. That standby force, does this exist in reality? That standby force is not something you can call up in an emergency. Because to the best of my knowledge, I may be wrong, it's only Nigeria that went in there. And Nigeria is acting on the basis of the brotherly request by the Republic of Benin, which is just next door. While, as an ordinary man, I think that that's nice for Nigeria to show that, yeah, we're the biggest country in West Africa. Yep. We will not allow any nonsense. There is the legal aspect of it. Now, some people may say it's political, it's about survival, it's not legalese. But the Constitution of Nigeria is the basic law in Section 5. The president of Nigeria, if he sees that Nigeria is facing imminent attack, is given powers to deploy troops. But subsections 4 and subsection 5 of that Section 5 says he shall get the approval, the ratification of the National Assembly. Did the president seek the approval of the National Assembly, even if it was a weekend, Sunday morning emergency? Now, if you go to Section 305 of the same Constitution, under which the President of Nigeria as Commander-in-Chief can declare a state of emergency, Sub 2, Sub 3 will seem to explain that, look, the President also needs the concurrence of the National Defense Council and then that of the National Assembly. However, if he does not, if he acts without getting the approval of the National Assembly, the Constitution of Nigeria says within 14 days limit, he has to get the concurrence of the National Assembly who will ratify that action. Now, a community reading of Section 5 and Section 305, sub 2(3), will seem to tell us that the Constitution of Nigeria does not allow a situation where the President of Nigeria, even as Commander-in-Chief, can act unilaterally. And the whole idea is to prevent a dictatorship. Our Constitution is modeled after, American democracy Constitution. Yeah. So President Tinubu having done this, they may say, well, he consulted with the leadership of the National Assembly, he called people, he didn't act unilaterally, he needed to protect Nigeria and all of that, or respond to a brotherly request. He will have to, before 12 noon today, transmit a letter to the National Assembly to say that this is the action I have taken. I need the ratification of the National Assembly. That's what our law says. But you may say this is not legalistic and all that, but we have to respect our Constitution. And then the National Assembly can be persuaded to say, well, okay, Nigerian troops are in the Republic of Benin for this reason, for that reason, and it was an emergency. The president needed to act to prevent collateral damage. But I salute the Nigerian soldiers, the Air Force, the ground troops who went in there, clearly for one reason. It was a demonstration effect to send a signal to anybody, any ambitious person in Nigeria who may want to imitate what is happening, what has happened in Mali, Madagascar, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Niger, Chad, that the Nigerian military has the capacity to quell any kind of violation of the constitutional order. However, President Patrice Talon has spoken, but President Patrice Talon, I didn't hear him paying special attention to Nigeria. I thought if we deployed our troops, we incurred cost. Patrice Talon should, at least as a brother, say, Nigeria helped or ECOWAS helped. But he said loyal forces. Who are those loyal forces? We are a sovereign country, and President Tinubu may have shown brotherhood and solidarity. We deserve to be commended for that. Finally, the situation in Ondo State. We just had the Imo Economic Summit. And one of the things we said is that these states have to provide an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, for entrepreneurs to thrive. And we have seen in the example of John Vance, right, and Ondo State, that the state government is committed to promoting entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurship. That is a lesson, an example that other states can learn from.